Hey, come under the covers. I've got something I want to show you.
Oh god, I'm really tired. I don't want to see your solid snake.
No, it's not that. Trust me. Come on.
Oh god.
Glow-in-the-dark dinosaurs.
You are such an idiot.
Well guys, today we've got the beasts of the Mesozoic, glow-in-the-dark dinosaurs, Velociraptor, Protoceratops, and Sedacosaurus. Let's get these guys out of the box. I've said it before, I'm not really much of a box guy, but this is a pretty collector-friendly package. And on the underside of the inner tray, we've got lots of collector cards and accessories. The collector cards feature art by Ross Perchetti, and the accessories are mostly display bases and alternate legs so you can put them in a number of interesting poses. Being beasts of the Mesozoic dinosaurs, they're incredibly posable. Take a look at this dynamic running yellow Sedacosaurus. Also, these are 1/18th scale, and they're not big dinosaurs, so these figures are pretty tiny. But despite their diminutive size, they pack an absolute crap ton of articulation. The sculpts, like all of the beasts of the Mesozoic dinosaurs, are exquisite, but the paint is nothing to write home about. But that's because they're retro-inspired glow-in-the-dark dinosaurs. What do you expect? But you know what? I've got some non-glow-in-the-dark Velociraptors as well. Here's Velociraptor mongolensis. We'll just get him out of the package real quick, and he's packaged pretty securely. Now this guy's paint is pretty amazing, especially considering the size. But I'm still gonna repaint him, cause, well, that's what I do. But I didn't stop there. I also got Velociraptor osmolske. That is the blue one. So what's different about osmolske and mongolensis? Well, different geographic origin. Aside from that, minor differences in the skull, like the absence of a specific ridge on the neurovascular verema present on mongolensis, and variations in the tooth structure. Beasts of the Mesozoic distinguish the two species by their color, and more ruffed feathers along the shoulders of mongolensis. But today we're going to pretend these are all mongolensis, and that those differences are just sexual dimorphism. The first step in repainting Beasts of the Mesozoic figures is taking them apart. This is a lot safer if you heat them up first. That's going to make the plastic soft and pliable, and make the figure much more amenable to disassembly. Now I already mentioned these guys are chock full of articulation, and they can actually be broken down into pretty small pieces, so you're going to want to be very careful not to lose any of them. I'm going to recommend making sure you've got a clean workspace for this part. Breaking down 5 little dinosaurs is going to mean that I'm going to have 5 little piles of dinosaur parts, and some of those parts are pretty small. That's 2 down, 3 to go. I'm going to remove the limbs on these, but I'm going to leave them intact. So remove the wing at the shoulder, but don't separate the arm at the elbow or the wrist. I will also be leaving the jaw on the head even though we'll remove the head. Don't take anything apart that you're not confident you can put back together. Now we've got 5 little dinosaur piles. Now we do that thing we do with every dinosaur repaint. Base coating. With warm buff. As thrilling as this is, I'll catch you guys in the next step. Well, that was absolutely thrilling. Now we're going to spray the dorsal areas of our Protoceratops with khaki. And then we can move on to the patterning. Just a few more parts to go, and then we can start adding some color on this thing. Although admittedly, the color we're going to put on this thing isn't very colorful. We'll be starting with burnt umber eye stripes. Prior to applying the burnt umber paint, I've watered it down with water, which will help it to flow over the model and not muck up all of the fine detail, which is one of the risks you take with thicker paints on smaller figures. After painting that eye stripe, I'm outlining the frill. With the frill more or less painted, we're going to add some horizontal stripes on the front part of the torso. One along the spine, and another on either side going up over the shoulder. Because the beasts of the Mesozoic Protoceratops, well, all the beasts of the Mesozoic figures, feature a mid-torso joint, we'll want to put them next to each other so that we can make sure the patterns line up with the front halves and the rear halves. We don't want this thing to come out looking like the San Diego Comic-Con Buck T-Rex. With the stripes marked out on the torso, it's time to mark out the stripes on the tail, and those ones are going to be vertical. Once we get all of those vertical stripes knocked out, we can start working on the inside of the mouth. For that, we're going to use my favorite inside of the mouth color, classic caramel mixed with just a tad of metallic red. And it'll be a lot easier to paint this while the jaw is detached. The Protoceratops also has teeth in the back of his jaw, so I'm going to paint those with antique parchment. I'm going to use some burnt umber, watered down and muddied with a little bit of territorial beige, and just kind of blend that burnt umber edge of the frill into the rest of it. It doesn't look that great now, but it'll turn out. Speaking of territorial beige, I'm going to paint another stripe inside of all of those existing stripes. So we'll have territorial beige stripes with a burnt umber outline. This is eerily similar to what I did with the patterning on the beasts of the Mesozoic Triceratops a few months back. We'll have to be careful not to let this become a habit. But for the Protoceratops, this will be fine. Just don't let me do this on the Monoclonius, or juvenile Centrosaurus. Sorry, my age is showing. Once all of these territorial beige stripes are done, we can start to reassemble the dinosaur. Fortunately, it doesn't take all the king's horses and all the king's men to put Protoceratops together again. Although a basic understanding of anatomy does help. That way we don't put the Protoceratops' head on his ass and his tail on his neck. With our Protoceratops reassembled, we're going to paint some horizontal stripes on the thigh. And just like the horizontal stripes on the body and the vertical stripes on the tail, we're going to use burnt umber for this. This is an awfully tiny dinosaur and we want these stripes to be nice and sharp, so a toothpick is going to be the best way to apply these. It also helps to thin down the paint a little bit. We are also doing stripes on the forelimbs of the Protoceratops. And as we do not want a lopsided dinosaur, we are going to do this on the right side as well. Once these burnt umber horizontal stripes are nice and dry, we can go ahead and do internal stripes with territorial beige. Same deal here, thin your paints a little bit and apply with a toothpick. Very spiffy. Just to keep everyone on their toes and add a little bit of variation in color, we're going to do the internal stripes on the tail with chestnut. It is important to remember to do both sides of the tail. And I think that just about takes care of the main patterning on this Protoceratops. But we could add a little bit more variation in color on the frill. So I'm going to dab some very watered down chestnut on the frill. And then follow that up by mixing a little bit of territorial beige in with that chestnut. These will be nice faint spots once it dries. This formerly glow-in-the-dark dinosaur is starting to look very Protoceratopsy. We just need to add a few finishing touches, like dark granite for the Protoceratops' toenails. Ceratopsian feet are weird. Once we're done with those toenails, we're going to paint the eye. Well, both eyes. I wanted to use a brown for the eyes, but that didn't really work out with the eye stripe, so instead we're using King's Gold. At some point I must have painted his beak. And lastly, we'll be painting the Protoceratops' jugal horn. We're going to do this in dark granite as well. I also added pupils to the eye, just didn't work on camera. One dino done, a few more to go. So sorry guys, the footage for the Sedacosaurus is a little bit of a mess. But we're going to start out by doing a series of dense speckles between the dorsal coloring and what will be the counter shading. As I said, this footage is kind of a mess, and a lot of it seems to just be my hand. I should probably fire my cinematographer. More speckles on the rear part of the torso. A speckled Sedacosaurus is a happy Sedacosaurus. Once I'm satisfied with the number of speckles on this dinosaur, we can go to the airbrush and add some dorsal coloring. For that, we're going to use burnt umber. I'm also going to reattach the forelimbs to the front part of the torso. And then we'll paint that part. Teeny tiny figures, so a little bit of paint goes a long way. Let's get that neck painted too, and then we can reattach it to the front of the torso. For the tail, we're going to forego the speckles and add stripes instead. I'm using jet black for these stripes, because the tail, like the rest of the Sedacosaurus, is going to be painted in burnt umber, and I'd like him to show through that a little bit. And we need to remember to paint both sides of this tail. We don't want a lopsided paraface lizard, which is also a dinosaur. With the tail striped, we'll do a little bit of airbrushing on the head, which will also be burnt umber. After all, we do kind of want it to match the rest of the dinosaur. And after that, for some reason, we're going to reattach the front and the rear parts of the torso. Once we have a nearly reassembled dinosaur, we'll go ahead and do some more painting on that head, and we'll reinforce those stripes on the tail. I honestly would not recommend using the Sedacosaurus footage as any kind of a tutorial. It is all over the place. I could blame technical difficulties, as there were technical difficulties, but it really had more to do with painting 3 dinosaurs at once. Now we'll put some spots on the quills and make them look more quilly. It is a damn technical marvel that beasts of the Mesozoic were able to get all these quills on a figure this tiny. Well, once this looks porcupiney enough, we can go ahead and paint the claws. I'll use gloss black for the Sedacosaurus' toenails. And once all those toenails are done, we're going to paint the toenails on the alternate set of legs. I did this for the Protoceratops too, just didn't get around to filming it. And with that, the Sedacosaurus is done. 2 down, Velociraptors to go. I'm going to use yellow ochre mixed with warm buff for the dorsal color on 2 of the Velociraptors. And we're going to spray this onto each of the parts individually before reassembly. As for the 3rd Velociraptor, I kind of accidentally deleted the footage of his painting. Whoops. We're going to use dark gray, which is actually a medium gray, for the snouts and feet of the yellow Velociraptors. As large as the Tyrannosaurus Rex drumsticks are, the Velociraptor drumsticks are that much smaller. Once all of the feet are painted in dark gray, we're going to go in and paint the manus dark gray as well. And we'll try not to slop any of that dark gray on those beautiful wing feathers, which is why we've got to do this with the regular paintbrush instead of the airbrush. Oh, they look so cozy.
Help, I've fallen down!
We'll just ignore this Velociraptor that fell down for a moment and paint an eye stripe. It's just a little eye stripe that goes from the socket to the snout, and we're going to use watered down dark granite for that. And what we do to one of these yellow Velociraptors, we will also do to the other. With those little eye stripes done, I think we're going to do a little bit of work on the wings. Using very watered down territorial beige, I'm going to do 2 parallel stripes running down the length of the wing feathers. Nothing fancy, but it's going to make them look very raptory. Once we finish up with this first Velociraptor's wings, we'll go ahead and do the same thing to the second Velociraptor's wings. Once we have those wings taken care of, we can move on to the main patterning. Using that same watered down territorial beige, we're going to mark out the spacing for the stripes along the body, starting at the back of the head, and moving all the way down to the tip of the tail. As we mark out the spacing for the stripes along the body, we want to be mindful of where all of the articulation points are. We don't really want to put any stripes inside of a joint. Not that kind of a joint. Calm down, Snoop Dogg. Once we've marked out the spacing for all those stripes, there's nothing left to do but drag those stripes down. Because this figure is so small, and because we want those stripes to be nice and crisp, it might be necessary to sharpen the toothpick, adjust the viscosity of the paint, or both. Unrelated to the actual painting of these figures, these tiny 1/18th scale beasts of the Mesozoic Velociraptors are awesome. They're tiny and velociraptor-y. I find both of those qualities appealing. And not that there was anything wrong with the original colors, but I'm gonna like the colors even more once I'm finished. Now, in all honesty, they do have a tendency to come apart in some of the articulation points, so you want to be gentle with them. And an argument could be made that maybe they don't need to be quite as articulated as they are, but I love these little guys. And bonus points, they even have painted dew claws. As tiny as they are, they have painted freaking dew claws. Anyways, enough gushing. Point is, some of my dinosaurs are worth what I paid for them, and some of them are not. These definitely are. So we don't want them to be lopsided dinosaurs. So we better paint that other side too. I think I'll go ahead and speed the footage up a little bit more for this side though. The right side is done the same way as the left side. We just drag those stripes down and make them angle slightly forward. And once we get this raptor knocked out, we'll just go ahead and do the same thing to the other one. Now, if you don't want to watch the same process all over again, there's absolutely nothing wrong with skipping ahead a few minutes. With all that stripiness taken care of, we can go ahead and paint in the eyes. And they are tiny. I'm going to use Inca Gold for the eyes on the yellow Velociraptors. And the whole pupil thing, I had to use a pinhead for that, and it didn't really make it onto video. As for the third Velociraptor, whose painting footage I accidentally deleted, we're going to do his eyes with Color Shift Green. He's a scary little bastard. I think he's ready to take on the Protoceratops. And now our little Velociraptor tribe is done. Time for glamour shots. Well, time to set up for glamour shots. I'll be able to hide the Beast of the Mesozoic display stands easily enough on the Sedacosaurus and Protoceratops. But the Velociraptor foot clip goes over the foot, so the best way to deal with that is just to glue one of each of the raptor's feet to a small piece of cardstock. A small dab of hot glue is a great temporary solution for putting your raptors where they need to be, especially if you want them to balance on one of their tiny little feet. Works for Compsognathus too. Once I'm confident that all of my dinosaurs are going to stand where I want them to, we can start building the set. A piece of poster board sprayed chestnut for the ground, and a backdrop for the sky. Reluctantly, I'm also going to be using real rocks. Oh well, gotta do what you gotta do. Now we'll just add a few pieces of vegetation. Well, plastic vegetation. And now to decide where to put my dinosaurs. Once the dinosaurs are more or less where I want them to be, we'll just pour some sand down around them. I just painted this fake log, and I want it in this shot, but I just can't figure out where the hell to put it. Oh well. Now I'll use a plastic spoon and bury those display bases. And hopefully this is starting to look like the Mongolian early Cretaceous. Glamour shots!
Filthy little hobbitses.